This is a world where every person has a chance to become a god. According to the degree of divine power, people here are divided into demigods, true gods, elders, and higher gods. Every person having reached the age of 18 can awaken the realm of the gods and find their irreplaceable representative. There is also a gradation of ranks among the representatives. The more talented a person is, the more potential their representative may have, a potential that will allow them to develop to the highest level. Will the main character, a man who awakened the divine realm but received a representative of the lower level, a worthless locust, be able to rewrite his fate in such conditions? Now, the main character was at school, but a local bully pestered him. Jean-Bin stood in front of his desk, calling him a brat and exclaiming, "Is he really tired of living? How dare he argue with me? I always get what I want. If he doesn't give up the divine PowerPoints voluntarily, I swear I'll destroy his realm of gods." This guy, Jin-Bin, is an arrogant school bully, mistakenly gifted with incredible power by the heavens. His god realm contains the power of an orc army of 5,000. Han Wu, the weakling protagonist, responded, "Try it if you dare." The boy whose body Han Wu found himself in had grown up with the most inferior representative, a locust. Why would a weakling like him dare to answer back to a powerful idiot who was unfairly gifted by fate? It all started yesterday. He came to this world where anyone could become a god just yesterday. When he arrived, he found himself in the body of a pathetic, spineless scumbag who, on his 18th birthday, awakened the god realm with a locust representative. His grandfather, whom he visited in the hospital, told him that his parents were lost in the chaotic sea of stars of the Imperial Academy, but should still be alive. If he got the chance, he should try to find them. A girl named Chinwan also started pestering him, saying that if he was willing to become her slave and feed her thunder gods with his locusts every day, she would guarantee that he would be able to graduate and get a high school diploma. She urged him to think carefully about her offer. On top of that, the school bully, Jean-Bin, began extorting 100 points of divine power from him, threatening to destroy his divine realm. Apparently, the difficulty of this life was cranked up to a hellish level from the start. His only representatives were locusts, and with that, he wouldn't be able to enter the Imperial Academy, let alone find his parents. Han Wu wasn't going to just stand there and let Jean-Bin ruin his life. He approached the capsule, put on his helmet, and thought, "Since I'm in this world, I should at least try to fix my situation." The system reported that the connection to the god realm had begun. He successfully connected, and his eyes widened at the sight of green fields and mountains before him. Looking down in surprise, he saw locusts resting on the grass. A status window opened, displaying information about him and his god realm. He had a unique talent called Heaven's Chosen Son, and the divine ability of accelerating growth and sacrificing life. He currently had 1 divinity point and 0 divine power points. His power of faith was 200,000, and the level of his god sphere was the first. Now, in his sphere, there were 800,000 adult locusts, 160,000 young ones, and 20 million eggs. He thought back on his body's memories and realized that previously, the body didn't have the talent of Heaven's Chosen Son, nor the ability to sacrifice life. Those must have appeared after his transfer. He opened the description of his talents. The Heaven's Chosen Son talent meant he was a person chosen by the heavens themselves, possessing great luck. For each level achieved, he would gain 1 unique ability. The sacrifice of life ability allowed him to sacrifice the life of a creature once a day and receive a product equal in value to that life. The product was randomly generated after the sacrifice. Looking at his first talent, Han Wu thought, "This must be my cheat, which I received when I was transferred to this world." As for the unique ability of sacrifice of life, he believed it probably came from becoming a divine being. Not bad at all, he thought. Maybe with these cheats, I'll still be able to fulfill my grandfather's last wish. But that's only if I can survive the encounter with Jean-Bin tomorrow. Thoughtfully, he looked down at the representative description window and saw that the locusts had the talent of reproduction. Their degree of faith was classified as fanatics. They obeyed the orders of their god. There were 3 classifications of believers: devout, fanatics, and saints. He could gather 1 point of faith per day, and the locusts reproduced at a rate of 300 individuals per day. Their life cycle spanned 90 days, 15 days as eggs, 15 days as juveniles, 45 days as adults, and 15 days as old locusts. Han Wu considered this. His representatives had the talent for reproduction, and their life cycle was only 90 days. Using his sacrifice of life talent, he could accelerate their growth. In the real world, 1 day equaled 100 days in the god's realm, which meant that several generations of locusts could grow in just 1 real-world day. Realizing this, a plan formed in his mind. He decided to take a big risk and make a bold bet. If he won, he would instantly become a master. If he lost, he would lose everything and be reduced to a complete non-entity. The next morning, Han Wu went to school. When Bin entered the classroom, he immediately went to Han Wu's desk and asked if he had considered Qinwan's offer. Was he ready to become her slave? She promised that if he accepted her offer, no one would lay a finger on him until the end of the school year. Han Wu, however, refused. Qinwan, not expecting this, exclaimed in surprise, "Do you even understand what you just said? Without my protection, you'll be eaten alive." Han Wu replied, "Perhaps you're right, and maybe I will be eaten alive before I can leave here, but I still refuse. Even weaklings like me have some dignity." He appreciated her concern, but his mind was made up. If she had nothing else to say, she could leave. Qinwan walked away from his seat, displeased, and muttered that he would regret his decision. Shortly afterward, Bin and his friends approached Han Wu. One of them told him not to be stupid and not to make them strain themselves. Another demanded he hand over the divine power points quickly, or they would destroy his pathetic god sphere. Han Wu looked at them, tired and weary, but when Bin put his hand on Han Wu's shoulder, something snapped. Angrily, Han Wu told him to take his hand off. Bin, irritated, asked, "Are you tired of living? How dare you argue with me? If you don't give up your divine power points voluntarily, I swear I'll destroy your god's sphere." Han Wu frowned and told him to try. Bin was confused. Han Wu was usually too afraid to even lift his head, but today was different. Bin's friends started egging him on. One of them said that he had never seen what a destroyed god's sphere looked like, and another happily pointed out that Han Wu's locusts were dragging down the average strength of the class. They urged Bin to deal with him and force him to leave the school. Bin smiled confidently and pulled out a card from his pocket. He told Han Wu not to say later that he hadn't given him a chance. He chose death for himself. He almost felt sorry for wasting 10 power points on someone as worthless as Han Wu. Using the card, Bin generated a portal between realms and prepared to invade Han Wu's god realm. Han Wu felt a surge of nervousness, but quickly steadied himself as he was sucked into the portal. A second later, he found himself in a rocky area facing a huge gate. When it opened, a mass of orcs with glowing red eyes emerged, led by none other than Bin, now floating in the sky like a deity. Bin commanded his orc army to destroy Han Wu's weak locusts and his god's sphere. Outside, a live broadcast of the battle was being shown. The students watching noticed that Bin's orc army had grown larger, with someone speculating that his rank must have improved to at least the top 30. Meanwhile, back in the battle, Han Wu summoned his locusts. Looking at the horde of orcs approaching, he ordered his locusts to self-detonate and attack the enemies. The students watching the live broadcast saw the locusts turn a strange red color, and one of them asked in surprise, "What kind of locusts are those? Shouldn't they be ordinary?" Another student recognized them and exclaimed, "Those are self-detonating locusts. But how did he manage to obtain so many? He only had ordinary insects in his god realm before." "Doesn't matter," said another. "Even if they're elite, they're still locusts. There's no way they can stand up to orcs." The orcs charged forward, and the locusts rushed to meet them. When the two groups collided, the locusts exploded, creating huge columns of flame that rose into the sky. Han Wu smiled as he watched. The day before, he had used his sacrifice of life ability, leaving 1 million adult locusts to reproduce and sacrificing the rest. The locusts were consumed in a sacrificial fire, which rose like a tornado into the sky. The system then presented Han Wu with several options for rewards. The first option offered 10,000 goblin warriors, an unusual creature. The second option was the Spring of Life, which produced life-giving water to nourish his creatures and improve the environment of his god realm. The third option was a sacred artifact, the Heart of Explosion, which, when placed in his god realm, would give some of his representatives the ability to cause explosions. Han Wu considered the first option tempting, as it would help him easily deal with the immediate problem. However, it was a one-time summoning, and in the end, he would still be left weak. The Spring of Life sounded useful for strengthening his creatures, but it would take time, and the battle was coming the next day, so it wasn't practical. He chose the third option, the Heart of Explosion, since it had lasting benefits. The reward applied directly to his main representatives, and it wouldn't disappear after use. If he was lucky, this might be exactly what he needed. A red crystal appeared above his hand, which he immediately smashed. He then threw an insect with all his strength, causing it to explode. As he watched the raging flames, he thought he was lucky. The orcs might survive the explosions, but if he increased the number of locusts, he might stand a chance. He needed to experiment with this strategy. As the battlefield filled with dust and smoke, the students watching wondered what was happening. When the dust settled, the field was littered with orc corpses, though some had survived. Han Wu summoned more locusts and sent them against the remaining orcs. Meanwhile, Qinwan, watching from the crowd, smiled slightly and thought that things were getting interesting. Seeing the locusts nearing his forces, Zhang Bin's orcs froze in place, unsure of what to do. From his position in the sky, Zhang Bin ordered the surviving orcs to retreat to his god realm. But Han Wu, with a smile, asked, "Running away already?" It was too late. Han Wu stretched out his hand and ordered his locusts to pursue the fleeing orcs, even if it meant invading Zhang Bin's god realm. A massive swarm of locusts flew through the gate, and soon, powerful explosions echoed from within. Zhang Bin, now angry and desperate, yelled at Han Wu, demanding that he call off his insects and leave his realm. The locusts were destroying his orcs, and Zhang Bin pleaded, admitting defeat and promising he would never bother Han Wu again if he just stopped. But Han Wu coldly replied, "I don't want anything from you. I just want you to suffer the fate you wanted to impose on me." Just then, a stern male voice called out, "That's enough! Stop now!" It was Teacher Lian, who ordered Han Wu to stop the attack, saying that he had already won and there was no need to go further. Zhang Bin, crying out to the teacher for help, hoped the man would intervene. But Han Wu, ignoring the teacher's order, continued to direct the locusts. They breached Zhang Bin's god realm and began to tear it apart. As Zhang Bin screamed in agony, Han Wu's locusts targeted his god sphere's core, ready to destroy it. Teacher Lian, seeing this, shouted angrily, telling Han Wu not to pretend that he didn't hear him. Han Wu, calm but defiant, replied, "I heard you just fine. But let me ask you something. Where were you when Zhang Bin and the others bullied me and extorted god points from me? Why didn't you intervene?" Lian hesitated. He knew Han Wu had a point, but he muttered something about dealing with it later, as if he didn't want to admit the truth. Han Wu asked another question. "If I had been in Zhang Bin's place, would you have intervened then?" The teacher remained silent, unable to answer, and Han Wu took that silence as confirmation. Without a word, Han Wu ordered his locusts to destroy Zhang Bin's god sphere core. The portal began to collapse, and Jean Bin's scream echoed across the battlefield. The live broadcast ended, and all the students were left in shock at what had just happened. Jean Bin, sitting on the ground in defeat, cursed quietly, knowing that his realm had been completely destroyed. Back in the classroom, teacher Lian stormed in, furious. He shouted for Han Wu to come to him immediately, but one of the students informed him that Han Wu had already left for home. Lian clenched his fists in rage and muttered that he would ensure Han Wu was expelled. Meanwhile, in Han Wu's god sphere, he stood in the middle of a deserted field, reflecting on the battle. It was time to take stock. A system window appeared in front of him, reporting the current number of his representatives. Now, in his sphere, there were 1,819 self-detonating locusts and 4,543 ordinary ones. Looking at the report, Han Wu decided that he needed to start breeding more locusts. They would still be useful to him. Next, he attached the fragment of Jean Bin's God Sphere core, which he received after the battle, to his own core. A red crystal appeared above his hand, and the attachment process began. The area of his God Sphere increased to 260 square kilometers, 100 square kilometers of fertile land, 20 square kilometers of mines, 40 square kilometers of forest, 60 square kilometers of desert, and 40 square kilometers of mountains. He also received the second-level Divine City Core, a first-level sacred artifact called the Orc Hammer, and 820 orcs, some of which had iron equipment. Han Wu nodded in satisfaction. "Not bad," he thought. "This should be enough to last me until I graduate." However, Jean Bin's words about his parents still echoed in his mind. If 2 demigods, his parents, came after him, there was no way he could handle them. And judging by Teacher Lian's behavior, the school would likely offer him no protection. He would have to rely on his own strength. He decided to exchange the Orc Hammer. Maybe someone would offer him something more useful in return. A second later, a system notification appeared, alerting him that someone had already responded to his exchange request. The offer was for 1 flame lava crystal. He examined the offer, thinking aloud, "Flame lava crystals increase resistance to fire and can also enhance the power of explosions. This will significantly strengthen my locusts." He agreed to the exchange, and a red crystal floated above him. A new type of locust, called the magma locust, appeared in his god sphere. These locusts produced 1/5 of a faith point per day, reproduced up to 20 individuals per day, and had a life cycle of 250 days. Han Wu picked up one of the magma locusts from the ground and tossed it aside, watching as it exploded. Smiling, he observed, "Now these babies pack the punch of a hand grenade. Plus, magma flies from the explosion. The damage and radius of destruction are impressive. I guess I now have my own batch of fragmentation grenades." Meanwhile, Jean Gang, Jean Bin's father, entered the deputy director's office, visibly upset. "The core of my son's god sphere has been destroyed, and now it can't be restored in any way. Yet your school hasn't given me any explanation," he demanded angrily. The vice principal, Sue, calmly responded, "From what I understand, your son was the one who invaded another student's god realm. He has been bullying other students for a long time. Jean Gang wasn't having any of it." "So you're saying my son is the only one to blame here? The school and the teachers have nothing to do with it, right?" His wife chimed in angrily. "We think the student who destroyed our son's core should be punished. The school should at least expel him." Meanwhile, back in his god realm, Han Wu was using his growth acceleration skill to breed as many magma locusts as possible. But before he could do much, Vice Principal Sue called him. He frowned, expecting this, and answered the call. Sue informed him that Jean Bin's parents had visited the school, demanding that he be expelled. She recounted their conversation. Jean Bin's mother had furiously demanded Han Wu's expulsion, but Sue had pointed out that Jean Bin was the one who had initiated the conflict by invading Han Wu's god realm. It was simply self-defense, and they had no grounds to expel him. However, Sue continued, Zhang Gang offered a compromise. He proposed sending a detachment of 1,000 of his representatives to invade your god realm. He no longer cares about the result, but this would calm him down. She apologized, explaining that this was the best the school could do. But be warned, even 1,000 representatives of a demigod is a terrifying force. Their strength is comparable to 50,000 relatively strong representatives from a high school student. Will you be able to handle this? Han Wu thanked her for the warning and replied confidently, "I'll come to school tomorrow and settle everything." After ending the call, Han Wu sighed. "Looks like one explosive locust won't be enough. I'll need to speed things up a bit." Determined, he used his sacrifice of life ability again, sacrificing 4.8 million lives. A powerful explosion rocked his god sphere, and the system presented him with 3 new options for rewards. The first option was a sacred artifact called the Bloody Demonic Eye. Once absorbed by his god sphere's core, there would be a chance that his representatives would be born with a bloody eye, improving their dynamic vision and putting them in a berserker state at the sight of blood. The second option was a fireball crystal, which, when absorbed by the core, would give his representatives the ability to cast fireballs. The third option was a heroic type representative, the Emperor of the Wind Sword. Looking through the options, Han Wu was very pleased. For so many lives, these are great rewards. He considered the first option, tempting but limited. The second option was useful, but the third option, a hero-type representative, was by far the best. He chose the third option, and an old man appeared in front of him, the Emperor of the Wind Sword. This hero had the skills Whirlwind of the first level, Fury of the second level, Storm Slash of the third level, and Iron Sword Style of the fifth level, a technique he had created himself. His degree of faith was fanatic, and his power of faith reached 500,000 points per day. The Emperor had already lived for 150 years out of his 800-year lifespan. The Emperor addressed Han Wu respectfully, "Honored guide, I require a sword." Han Wu replied, "No problem," and opened the trading network. Because he had been accelerating the reproduction of his locusts over the past few days, he was now gathering 100 million faith power per day. That, combined with the points he received from selling excess land, brought him a total of 54 divine power points. Browsing the trading network, Han Wu found a whirlwind sword. The equipment was divided into 4 categories: ordinary equipment, sacred equipment, divine power equipment, and divine equipment. He bought the sacred whirlwind sword and handed it to the old man to try out. The Emperor swung the sword several times, releasing shockwaves before turning to Han Wu. "I need 3 more swords to release my true power," the Emperor stated. Han Wu was shocked. 3 more? That's 150 points of divine power. Does he think these points grow on trees? But with the demigod army set to attack him the next day, Han Wu knew he had no choice. He opened the system window to make more preparations. Meanwhile, Qinwan was meditating in her god realm, surrounded by birds that circled around her and even landed on her body. She was very focused, but her concentration broke as she remembered a moment from her childhood. One day she had fallen into a river, and Han Wu had come running to save her. After pulling her to shore, he had given her artificial respiration, which had revived her. These thoughts made it hard for her to meditate. Opening her eyes in frustration, she muttered, "Idiot! He's going to die because of his own stupidity." Her grandfather was a true god, and her family had 23 demigods. With her protection, Han Wu wouldn't have to fear anyone. Suddenly, a system window appeared in front of her, notifying her that Han Wu was calling. She answered and asked sarcastically, "Have you changed your mind? Decided to become my slave after all?" But Han Wu simply replied, "I just wanted to borrow some divine power." Qinwan crossed her arms and asked skeptically, "And how do you plan to repay that debt? With your trash representatives? Don't think that just because you defeated John Bin, you've become some sort of powerhouse. Your self-destructing locusts barely meet the criteria of an elite-type creature." Han Wu, hearing the insult, coolly replied, "Forget it then. Thanks anyway." He ended the call, leaving Chinwan frustrated. She clutched her head, wondering aloud why she had to be so sarcastic again. "That's not what I meant to say," she thought, worried that he had misunderstood her completely. Realizing her mistake, Chinwan called Han Wu back. When he answered, he asked, "What is it?" This time, she softened her tone, asking, "How much do you need to borrow? Drop me your account number." After ending the call, Han Wu purchased the missing weapons for the Emperor of the Wind Sword. Armed with 4 swords, the Emperor stood ready for battle. Han Wu, watching this, remarked with a mix of frustration and humor, "I've spent all my savings on this and even got into debt. I'll have to work all of this off." The next day, Han Wu arrived at school. His classmates were surprised to see him so calm. "Isn't he afraid?" one of them whispered. "A demigod's army is about to trample his god sphere." Another student scoffed. "He must be completely insane. Let's see if he remains calm when that demigod army destroys everything." Ignoring their chatter, Han Wu took his seat. Everyone seemed to expect him to fail, and that didn't surprise him. Chinwan approached him, noting that he had borrowed her divine power points in the hopes of standing against a demigod. She warned him not to waste his strength. "Even with a demigod army of 1,000, you won't stand a chance," she said. Han Wu smiled and replied, "I don't have any other choice." Chinwan frowned in frustration. "That's nonsense. You do have a choice. If you agree to become my slave, I'll ask my family to intervene and stop John Gang. My family has one true god and 23 demigods. His family only has one demigod. He wouldn't dare disobey us." But Han Wu turned away, thanking her for her concern. "But my answer won't change," he said, ending the conversation. He sat down at his desk, mentally preparing for the battle ahead. Chinwan stormed away, muttering about how ungrateful he was. Another student, seething with jealousy, whispered to his friends, "Why is she so worried about that trash? He's definitely going to die today." Soon after, the teacher entered the classroom with Jin Bin's parents. He pointed at Han Wu and angrily declared, "That's him!" Mrs. Du, Jin Bin's mother, exploded with anger. "How dare you attack my son's god realm, you little freak!" she screamed. Her husband gently grabbed her shoulders, calming her down, reminding her to keep their agreement with the school. The teacher called Han Wu forward, impatiently asking, "Where is Jin Gang? Let's not keep him waiting." With a smile, Han Wu replied, "I'd rather wait for Vice Principal Su." The teacher, annoyed, shot back, "Do you think the vice principal has nothing better to do? You alone will be enough to witness this battle, so stop acting like you're someone important." Just then, the door opened and Vice Principal Su entered the classroom. "What's with all the noise?" she asked sternly. The teacher immediately softened, awkwardly scratching the back of his head. "I'm sorry to bother you with such a trivial matter," he said. "I was just teaching the students a useful lesson." Sue crossed her arms, displeased. "Don't forget that you're a teacher first, not some demigod's servant," she reminded him. Then, turning to Han Wu, she asked, "Are you ready?" With a confident smile, Han Wu nodded. "Yes." Jin Gang stepped forward, taking out an invasion card. "Let's begin," he said, and the battle commenced. Han Wu was teleported to another dimension, where a vast army of red-dyed wolves emerged from the portal in front of him. A massive werewolf led the army. The students watching from the outside were stunned. "Look at this!" one of them exclaimed. "Jin Gang's entire wolf cavalry is made up of elite creatures, and that leader, it's something beyond elite." Another student added, "This combination of green orcs and wild wolves, armed with top-tier equipment, there's no way Han Wu stands a chance." Jin Gang, standing confidently, looked down at Han Wu. "I'll make you regret what you did to my son, even if you don't think you'll survive this." Vice Principal Su was also surprised, noting the size of the army. "He's sneaky," she muttered. "That army clearly has more than 1,000 representatives." Chinwan noticed it too. "That's a scam," she said angrily. "He's using 2,000 representatives." Jin Gang ordered his cavalry to charge. Thousands of wolves rushed forward as Han Wu released his locusts to meet them. "He's got nearly 7 million elite locusts," someone from the crowd exclaimed. "But how?" another student asked. "Didn't he only have around 20,000 yesterday? How could he have 7 million today?" Yet, even with the staggering number of locusts, one observer pointed out that they wouldn't stand a chance against the heavily armed wolf cavalry. As the orcs, riding on their wolves, charged into battle, they collided with Han Wu's locusts, creating a chaotic scene of explosions. One of the students watching exclaimed, "He's already used up a lot of his self-detonating locusts, but the wolves and orcs don't seem to care at all. They're just suffering minor injuries." Teacher Lian smirked and muttered to himself, "If only he weren't so stubborn, he might have shown real talent in the future. What a shame. Our school is going to lose someone with potential." Another student noticed something strange in the sky and shouted, "What is that?" Black clouds of smoke appeared above the battlefield, and suddenly, Han Wu's magma locusts emerged, flying straight toward the enemy. The wolves and orcs froze, unsure how to respond, as the magma locusts crashed into them, setting off even larger explosions. The air filled with flames and flying lava. One of the students gasped, "What the hell are those? The explosive power is way stronger than normal self-detonating locusts, and they're spraying lava everywhere." Vice Principal Su turned to the students and asked, "Does anyone here have sensory abilities? Can someone identify those creatures?" One student activated his ability and reported, "They're called magma locusts, an elite type of creature." Hearing this, the vice principal smiled proudly. Meanwhile, John Gang, not fazed by the development, yelled down at Han Wu, "Don't think you can defeat me with a few insects. My wolf cavalry is stronger than that." At his command, the werewolf leader let out a fierce roar, and all the wolves howled in unison. An icy fog spread out from them, quickly containing the explosions and extinguishing the flames. One of the students watching remarked, "As expected of a demigod's army, even elite creatures can't stand up to them. The magma locusts are nearly exhausted, and Han Wu doesn't have much left." Jin Gang sneered, "Now I'll show you what real despair looks like." His army, still massive in numbers, charged forward, heading directly for Han Wu's God Realm core. Vice Principal Su, watching the live broadcast, looked down in disappointment, while Chinwan, though frustrated, couldn't bear to look away. But suddenly, someone shouted, "Look! Han Wu's God Realm core! There's someone standing in front of it!" Everyone turned their attention back to the live broadcast. There, standing confidently at the core of Han Wu's God Realm, was the Emperor of the Wind Sword, holding 4 sacred whirlwind swords. His stance was calm and unshaken, ready for battle. One of the students exclaimed, "Is that the whirlwind sword? Those swords are worth 50 divine power points each. How does he have 4 of them?" Another student, equally shocked, asked, "What is this creature? It's definitely not just an elite." Vice Principal Su smiled and explained, "That's a representative from the Wind Sword race. Creatures from this race are never born below the elite level." "But will that make a difference?" another student asked. "Jin Gang has plenty of unusual types, and his wolf captain is even stronger than elite creatures. Plus, the captain can lead the rest of the wolves to destroy Han Wu's core while they keep the Wind Sword busy." Su remained silent for a moment, thinking. "That's true. But there's something about the Wind Sword. Its power fluctuations are stronger than that of a typical elite creature. It's likely a hero-type representative." Jin Gang also noticed the Emperor of the Wind Sword and thought to himself, "I've trained for decades and have only managed to raise one hero-type creature. How could this brat, still a high school student, have a hero-level representative?" Determined, he shouted to his army, "Capture him, but don't kill him! I want this creature for myself. Once you've destroyed Han Wu's core, bring the hero to me." At his command, the wolves charged toward the Emperor of the Wind Sword, but the old man, unfazed, let out a sigh of dissatisfaction. With a swift movement, he used his third-level storm cut skill, swinging his 4 swords with incredible speed. The force of the attack sent shockwaves outward, and in an instant, he cut down the charging orcs and wolves. One of the wolves, refusing to back down, let out a scream, releasing an icy wind from its mouth that froze the Emperor's feet. The orc rider raised his sword, signaling his army to press forward, and the wolves followed, ready to finish off the hero. The Emperor of the Wind Sword, however, raised all 4 of his swords to the sky and activated the Iron Sword style. A vortex of wind formed above his head, growing stronger and stronger, until finally he unleashed it in a powerful shockwave that tore through the enemy ranks. The students watching were stunned. That's too much power," one of them exclaimed. The battlefield fell silent as the Emperor calmly stood over the remains of the fallen orcs and wolves. Zhang Gang cursed loudly and ordered his wolf cavalry general to destroy Han Wu's corps at all costs. The massive werewolf leader charged forward, preparing to strike the God Realm core. Suddenly, a voice boomed from above. "Zhang Gang, do you really think you can break your word so easily?" Startled, Zhang Gang looked up to see the school principal watching the battle. Nervously, he waved his hand and ordered his army to retreat. "No, of course not. I wouldn't dare break my word." The principal's gaze shifted to Han Wu, who was standing in his god realm, protected by the Windsword Emperor. "Not bad," the principal remarked with approval. And with that, the battle ended. Han Wu returned to the real world, having successfully defended his god realm. Vice Principal Su congratulated him but reminded him, "Don't think that just because you have a hero-level representative that you're invincible. You've done well, but it will still be difficult for you to break into the top 3 rankings." Han Wu smiled, unfazed. "I have a small favor to ask," he said. Su tilted her head curiously. "What is it?" "I'd like to change classes," Han Wu replied with a serious expression. His homeroom teacher, Teacher Lian, was visibly surprised and nervously waved his hands. "I know I haven't given you much attention in the past, but I promise that will change. I'll do everything I can to help you become the best. You'll get all the resources you need to develop. Just give me another chance." Lian was clearly thinking that, with Han Wu's rapid development, the boy had the potential to compete for a place in the top academy. As his teacher, Lian would be handsomely rewarded if that happened. He couldn't afford to lose such an opportunity, but Han Wu was firm in his decision. "I want to change classes," he repeated. Vice Principal Su frowned slightly. "You can't just switch classes that easily. There are school rules. However, if you're truly determined, you can try passing a test set by the school. If you pass, you'll be allowed to transfer." Han Wu immediately agreed. Qinwan, standing nearby, abruptly stood up and declared, "I want to change classes too, and I'm ready to take the test." Teacher Lian became nervous. "If you're unhappy with your studies, just tell me. There's no need to rush into this. We can talk after class." But Qinwan shook her head. "I have no complaints about my studies. I just want to change classes." Another student, Zhang Song, raised his hand and said that he also wanted to apply for a class transfer. The teacher, now clearly upset, asked, "You're the class monitor. Why would you suddenly decide to change classes?" Zhang Song thanked the teacher for his years of guidance, but he had his reasons. He glanced at Qinwan, thinking that wherever she went, he would follow. Vice Principal Su smiled and announced, "We'll have everything ready for tomorrow. Teacher Lian, follow me, please." As the day passed, the sun was beginning to set, and Han Wu walked outside the school. Qinwan followed him, her curiosity getting the better of her. "Where did you get that heroic-type creature from?" she asked. Han Wu glanced at her and replied, "That's none of your business." Frustrated by his curt response, Qinwan snapped, "It is my business. You owe me 150 points of divine power, and if you can't pay it back, you'll become my slave. So I have every right to know where you got that hero from." Han Wu, maintaining his calm, responded, "I'll pay you back, and I'll even add 5 points of interest right now. But as for the hero, That's not something I need to share." With that, he disappeared into his god realm, leaving Chinwan standing there, fuming. She cursed loudly, frustrated by her inability to get through to him. Inside his god realm, Han Wu assessed his representatives. There were now 1 billion ordinary locusts, 1 million self-detonating locusts, and 30,000 magma locusts. He sighed, knowing that this still wasn't enough. Tomorrow's test would be difficult. The Emperor of the Wind Sword appeared before him and reported, "The white wolves and riders are hiding in the mines of our world. Shall I eliminate them?" Han Wu frowned, thinking about how some of Jean Gang's wolf cavalry hadn't escaped and were now hiding in his divine realm. "They can't be left alive," he thought. "They might start destroying my other representatives, but it'd be a waste to simply kill them." He gave the order, "Capture them, but don't kill them. I need them alive." The Emperor nodded and set off to find the wolves. 2 hours later, he returned, dragging the captives behind him. Han Wu looked at them thoughtfully before deciding to sacrifice 24 wolves and 1 billion ordinary locusts. A fiery tornado swirled around him as the system gave him 3 options as rewards. The first was the Alpha Mechanism, a level 1 artifact. The second was a smelting furnace blueprint, which would allow him to produce sacred-type equipment. The third option was for 3 observation towers, which provided visibility and could help prevent surprise attacks. Han Wu glanced at the options, unimpressed. "An alpha mechanism is good, but can my brainless locusts even control it? A furnace? How would locusts forge anything? And an observation tower? What would I even be able to see from such a small height? None of these options seem very useful." Suddenly, Han Wu remembered that he still had a couple of hundred orcs left from defeating Zhang Bin. Curious, he activated the Falcon Eye ability and observed what the orcs were doing. They were busy mining ore and constructing a city. Seeing that the deity was watching, they praised him for giving them a wonderful life. Han Wu laughed, recalling how, after his victory, he had instructed them to mine ore. It seems this clan was predisposed to mining and creating things, but Zhang Bin ignored all that and made them warriors instead. Watching the orcs work, he realized they had great talent for creating equipment. Perhaps with their skills, the smelting furnace might be useful after all. He placed the structure in front of the orcs, saying, "I'm giving you a smelting furnace. Don't disappoint me." The orcs were overjoyed, exclaiming that their god had given them a furnace and that they would work hard to fulfill his expectations. At the school, the teachers had gathered for a meeting. Teacher Lian addressed his colleagues. "As you all know, the school is preparing tests for the 3 students who want to transfer classes, Han Wu, Qinwan, and Zhang Song. We've been tasked with setting the difficulty level of the tests. What are your thoughts?" One of the teachers replied, "What is there to think about? We're grateful to you for this opportunity. 3 of the best students in your class will transfer to one of us." Another teacher, Taksh, added with displeasure, "I'll say it directly. I don't care what kind of tests you prepare for Qinwan and Zhang Song, but I demand that the difficulty of Han Wu's test be set to the highest possible level. He needs to be punished for his disrespect." While waiting for their response, Teacher Lian thought to himself, "Sue almost ate me alive yesterday because of the sudden transfer of these 3. My class's performance has dropped significantly because of this, so I have to put Han Wu in his place." The other teachers agreed to his proposal, saying that they wouldn't be able to forgive themselves if they didn't take this opportunity to repay him for his kindness. The day of the test came, and all the students gathered in the classroom. Teacher Lian handed out the tests. Zhang Song received a level 1 test. He had to defend against 1,000 intruders. Qinwan received the same test. But when Han Wu saw his assignment, he was amazed. In order to transfer to another class, he had to defend against 10,000 intruders, a level 10 test. Vice Principal Su, noticing the clear bias, asked Teacher Lian, "Don't you think you're being too unfair to Han Wu?" Lian replied smugly, "This was the decision of all the teachers, not just mine. Hanwoo, unfazed, said with a smile, "It's fine. The teacher just wants me to demonstrate my abilities to the new teacher." Teacher Lien, clearly displeased with Hanwoo's confidence, stepped aside. Chinwon approached Hanwoo and once again made her offer, "If you agree to become my slave, no one will dare bully you. Not even this school can protect you from what's coming." Hanwoo thanked her for her concern, but told her they'd see each other after the tests. Frowning, Chinwon walked away, muttering about his ingratitude. Jung Song, watching her from a distance, smirked, thinking Hanwoo was a fool for refusing her help. Soon the test began. Inside Hanwoo's god realm, an army of goblins appeared. The students watching the broadcast were amazed. "Hanwoo's test is so much harder than the others," one exclaimed. Another student added, "That's what he gets for angering Teacher Lien. Now he's paying for his pride." In the god realm, Hanwoo cursed Teacher Lien, seeing that the goblins were all red, with excellent fire resistance. "There are so many of them. This is definitely rigged." Meanwhile, Teacher Lien smirked, pleased with himself. "An army of 10,000 red goblins will overwhelm his locusts easily. His realm will fall quickly." One of the observers congratulated Lien in advance. "This is a valuable lesson for Hanwoo." Lien replied smugly, "It's not a victory. It's just a useful lesson. There's no enmity between teachers and students. Hanwoo will soon understand that." Meanwhile, Vice Principal Su, still watching the live broadcast, encouraged Hanwoo. "You can do this, but don't push yourself too hard." In his god realm, Hanwoo gave the order for his locusts to attack. The red goblins responded by touching their chests, summoning fire in their hands, and hurling fireballs at the locusts. The explosions rocked the battlefield. Hanwoo quickly realized that his ordinary locusts weren't effective at all against the fire-resistant goblins. "It's time to bring out the big guns," Hanwoo thought. He then ordered the self-detonating locusts to engage the goblins. The goblins, seeing the red-colored insects charging at them, panicked, but it was too late. The locusts detonated upon impact, and multiple explosions ripped through the battlefield, killing 400 red goblins in an instant. At the same time, both Chinwon and Jung Song had completed their tests. One of the students watching the broadcast pointed out, "Look, they're already done, but Hanwoo is still struggling." Chinwon, standing next to Vice Principal Su, watched Hanwoo's battle with concern. Su, sensing her worry, remarked, "It seems like Hanwoo is going to have a hard time this time." Chinwon nodded grimly. "Locusts are still locusts, no matter how much he improves them. They simply don't have the potential to match up with stronger representatives." Meanwhile, Hanwoo's magma locusts entered the battle. The fiery explosions they caused killed 3,000 red goblins, but there were still 6,000 left, and they were advancing on his core. One of the students watching exclaimed, "He's finished! Even his hero can't hold back 6,000 goblins at once." Chinwon clenched her fists, clearly agitated by what she was seeing. "This is madness. The goblins are going to destroy his god realm core." Vice Principal Su contacted Hanwoo through the system and gently suggested, "Maybe you should just surrender. There's no shame in it. You fought well." But Hanwoo, determined, responded, "No, I'm not giving up yet. I'll fight until the last representative falls. Besides, I haven't lost this battle yet." At that moment, the Emperor of the Windsword, still holding his ground, used his third-level skill, Storm Slash. He swung his sword several times, unleashing shockwaves that decimated dozens of goblins in a single stroke. But the goblins didn't back down. They screamed defiantly and raised their hands to the sky, summoning streams of flame that engulfed the Emperor. Several explosions followed as the flames collided with the Emperor's defenses. One of the students watching the broadcast said in disbelief, "Even a hero-type creature is struggling. Hanwoo is done for this time." Teacher Lien, pleased with the way things were going, grinned and muttered, "This is the lesson he needs to learn. He turned his back on his teacher, and now he's paying the price." But then, someone pointed at the screen and shouted, "Look!" An army of orcs, led by Han Wu's remaining forces, arrived on the battlefield. The lead orc raised his battle axe and shouted, "We will protect our god!" The goblins froze in fear at the sight of the orcs. "Are those John Bin's orcs?" one of the students exclaimed. "Where did Han Wu get such talent from?" Another student added, "At this rate, Han Wu could be in the top 10 by the end of the year." With their orders given, the orcs rushed into battle. They fought fiercely, taking down goblins left and right. Within moments, the battlefield was littered with goblin corpses. Han Wu, watching this, smiled. "Well done," he said softly. Vice Principal Su and Chinwan both looked relieved as they witnessed his victory, while Teacher Lian gritted his teeth in frustration. After the battle ended, the teachers, watching the students, began to call the top performers to their respective classes. One teacher, clearly impressed, called out to Chinwan, "Join my class! I'll give you all the resources you need to strengthen your thunder gods." Another teacher turned to Zhang Song, offering him a secret technique for cultivating demonic representatives if he transferred. But all eyes were on Han Wu. One of the teachers turned to him and said, "Join my class, Han Wu. I'll provide you with a formidable orc army, at least 10,000 individuals strong. With such a powerful army, you'll be in the school's top 10 in no time." Another teacher named Tianan, focusing on Han Wu's specialty, offered, "I specialize in improving insect-type creatures. If you join my class, I'll help you enhance your locusts even further. I have several special methods to boost their growth." Han Wu quickly made his decision. "I'd like to join Teacher Tianan's class," he said. Chinwan and Zhang Song both followed suit, expressing their wish to join the same class. Tianan was delighted, knowing he had just gained 3 talented students. He handed them building cards as small gifts for joining his class. Han Wu's gift was a second-level building card called The Hive. It would occupy 1 square kilometer and produce 1 million insects per year. The Hive also inherited all the effects he applied to his other insectoid representatives. Han Wu was ecstatic. "This card is perfect for me," he thought. "If I place the Hive in my god realm, I'll be able to produce 1 million magma locusts per year, all with the explosion and fiery lava effects already built in." He gratefully bowed to his new teacher, who smiled and told him, "Save your thanks. Show your gratitude with good results instead." Vice Principal Su, turning to the other teachers, announced that the tests were officially over for the day. "But don't forget," she warned, "important exams are coming up in a week. The results of these exams will determine how the school's resources are distributed among the classes. Be sure to prepare your students well." Later in his god realm, Han Wu surveyed his representatives. His realm now contained 2.4 million common locusts, 5,000 self-detonating locusts, 300 magma locusts, 52 red orc blacksmiths, and his heroic representative, the Emperor of the Wind Sword. Looking at his meager army, Han Wu sighed. "This looks pitiful. If I had to take the exam tomorrow, I'd be at the very bottom of the school rankings." He realized that he needed to urgently increase the number of magma locusts and improve his other types. Just then, he noticed some of the red orcs working nearby and decided to investigate. The description of the red orcs showed they were elite creatures, having evolved from ordinary orcs after a bloody battle. These creatures had the talents of forging and fiery blood, increasing their resistance to high temperatures and improving skills related to fire. Han Wu was amazed. "So the orcs were able to evolve into elite creatures. This is incredible. If I make them my main representatives, I can use the growth acceleration ability on them and rapidly increase their numbers." 4 days later, Han Wu was ready. His ordinary locusts had bred to a population of 7.3 billion. Satisfied, he declared, "This should be enough. Time for my favorite part, the sacrifice." He swirled the locusts into a fiery tornado and performed the Sacrifice of Life ability, sacrificing millions of locusts. The system offered him 3 new options. The first was the Law of Gluttony, a sacred, broken artifact of the 2nd level. If placed in his god realm, his main representatives would gain the ability of gluttony, allowing them to consume energy and evolve into creatures of a higher type. However, the artifact was broken and only worked on normal-type creatures. The second option was the Hero Template, which would upgrade one of his representatives into a heroic-type creature. The third option was a small amount of divinity equal to about 100 billion faith points or 1 million divine power points. Han Wu's eyes lit up. "These options are amazing," he exclaimed. The Law of Gluttony could transform all his normal locusts into elite creatures, but he didn't have enough normal locusts at the moment to make it worthwhile. The Hero Template was tempting, but with so few ordinary locusts left, it wasn't as valuable to him. He decided to choose the Law of Gluttony. "I can't be too greedy," he thought. "It's time to fully develop my main representatives." Since he didn't have enough normal locusts, he decided to breed more in the hive first. 3 days later, Han Wu entered his god realm again and was shocked by what he saw. His locusts had grown to the size of horses. He approached one of the gigantic insects and decided to name it the Magma Locust Plus. The next day, Han Wu arrived at school, but before he could even sit down, Qinwan approached him with her usual question. "Would you like to become my slave?" She looked at him seriously, adding, "You don't have the support of a wealthy family, nor the necessary resources to stand out among the children of demigods. You've improved your locusts well, but they'll soon hit their limit. They lack the potential to compete with stronger creatures. Your orcs are good too, but in the end, they aren't your main representatives." Han Wu, still calm, replied, "I appreciate your concern, but you should stop asking me the same question. You'll see everything for yourself during the exam." Qinwan sighed in displeasure. "You're so stubborn," she muttered, storming away. Nearby, Zhang Song watched with jealousy, gritting his teeth as he stared at Han Wu. "One day," he thought angrily, "I'll make you disappear from Qinwan's sight forever." Their homeroom teacher entered the classroom, addressing the students with a serious tone. "This upcoming exam is very important. Your results will determine how much of the school's resources and equipment will be allocated to your class. So, give it your best effort." The school held a vast array of valuable items: sacred artifacts, additional lands for god realms, core shards, legions of various creatures, and more. But these would only be given to students who performed exceptionally well in the exam. The teacher continued, "Now, let's familiarize ourselves with the rules. The exam will have 2 stages, the selection stage and the ranking stage." He explained that in the selection stage, all students would face tests of the same difficulty. Those who passed would earn 1 point and move on, while those who failed would be expelled. In the ranking stage, students who passed the selection stage would have the option to refuse the ranking test or participate. Those who participated would defend their god realms against endless waves of invaders. With each wave repelled, their class would gain a point, and the student's personal ranking would increase. Han Wu raised an eyebrow. "So they expel people from the school right away? That's pretty harsh. The rewards must be worth it." The teacher then displayed the rewards. Students who rank in the top 100 would receive a random card of basic resources worth 100 divine power points. Those in the top 50 would receive a first-level sacred artifact. Those in the top 30 would receive a reproduction card, which increases the reproduction speed of creatures by 5 times for 10 years inside the god realm. Students in the top 20 would be given a first-level building called the Temple, which spreads a sacred aura within a 100-meter radius and accelerates the recovery of wounded creatures. The top 10 students would receive 1 divine weapon, worth up to 100,000 points of divine power, and could choose the weapon type themselves. Students in the top 5 would receive an elite seed, which increases a creature's propensity to evolve into an elite-type being. The top 3 would receive an additional level for their core, while the student who placed first would receive 1 point of divinity. Seeing this, Hanwoo's eyes widened in excitement. For rewards like this, I'll do anything, he muttered to himself. The teacher smiled at the enthusiasm in the room and announced, "The exam is about to begin. Prepare yourselves."
Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it and want to see the next parts, make sure to drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome content. Until next time, take care and see you in the next video.